Okay, our first analysis of the week is on USD.CAD. We're starting on the monthly as usual, looking for horizontal area sensitivity to identify our upper, mid, and lower monthly zones. Okay, so after we identify area sensitivity, it's time to talk flow. Now, this pair is giving me a really clean example of a push following a push. Now, you might say, David, you've been saying for so long that after a push there's an exhaustion, and that's correct. But an exhaustion can turn into a push if it breaks an area sensitivity. So here's a push to the downside. Why is it a push? It broke its mid-range zone. That's an area sensitivity. That makes it a push. Sellers enter the market. That's expected at our monthly lower zone. And then this became an exhaustion. But as soon as price managed to break this mid-range zone to the upside and continue to its monthly upper zone, this exhaustion then became a push, because it broke an area sensitivity. So this is a good example of how a push can then become a push. Now, what's after a push? That's right, an exhaustion. So what we're seeing is potential monthly exhaustion to our mid-range monthly zone. So now let's talk flow. So we see a push to the upside. What's after a push to the upside? That's right, an exhaustion to the downside. We see sellers enter the market at our monthly upper zone. That's expected. We see sellers protect the monthly zone in the past. Now, sellers didn't just enter, they entered with strong push. This is a bearish engulfing candle close, meaning on the lower time frame, that's a push to the downside. What's after a push to the downside? An exhaustion to the upside, which we see on the higher time frame. And now we're seeing confirmation 2, which is the second wave of sell pressure entering the market, telling me that we may see our higher time frame exhaustion to our mid-range monthly zone. So overall, we're only on the monthly, and I already know I'm only looking for short entries to the downside. All right, on to the weekly time frame. When we pull it out, there's no clear weekly mid-range zone. Now, what do we do when there's no clear mid-range zone? We don't identify it, we don't add it, because we don't add what's just not there. We don't make up zones. Okay, so one thing we're not waking up are these higher lows, so we can identify our weekly uptrend. So what do we do next? That's right, we talk flow. We try to understand what this time frame is telling us. So price made a push, as we know, to our monthly upper zone. We see the first wave of sell pressure hit the market. That's expected. Here's that monthly bearish engulfing candle close. What's after a push to the downside? Because that's what this bearish engulfing candle close is. An exhaustion to the upside. We see confirmation 2 with the second wave of sell pressure hitting the market, closing with the weekly bearish engulfing candle close below our higher time frame uptrend. That's a massive close below our higher time frame uptrend, because we know that there's a lot of buy sensitivity in that area. So now let's take it down another time frame for a closer look, see if we have any opportunities to the downside. All right, onto the daily time frame. It's time to talk about entry, and this entry is simply a push and exhaustion cycle entry. Okay, so we know that this higher time frame uptrend is an area sensitivity. The weekly bearish engulfing candle close on the daily is a push to the downside because it broke its area sensitivity, being this uptrend. Now, what's after a push to the downside? That's right, an exhaustion to the upside, where then we would be waiting for price action confirmation before placing an entry short. Now, there's only 2 scenarios that would make this trade invalid. If price continues to the downside without coming back for an exhaustion, this trade becomes invalid because risk reward is no longer optimal, and winners will only enter at completion of exhaustion, not at completion of a push. That's a rule I will never ever break. Now, the second scenario that would make this trade invalid is if price comes back for exhaustion but fails to see the sell pressure it needs for price action confirmation to the downside. So price may come back for exhaustion, and it may just continue back up to the upside, meaning it failed to see sell pressure, making this trade invalid. All right, on to gold for the next analysis.